Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to answer a question about lessons. Zimalta asks, wondering what Tim's self-considered greatest, most fulfilling game dev experiences were, and which one was the most hard but served as a lesson. That's a really good question. And as with many of my questions, I'm going to have to answer with some background because I want to talk about working with teams. And this isn't what you think it's going to be. I actually like working with teams. And I think that goes back to I started playing D&D in high school. That was fun. I worked with teams even in elementary school. I talked about in one video, I'm trying to do a New York Times crossword puzzle for a whole week in a reading class. I like that. Then I went to engineering school where you're put on project classes. It's just part of the curriculum. So you learn how to do that. I know a lot of people, especially in high school and college, when you're assigned to project classes and you're given a team, it can be a miserable experience because there are some people out there that just really try to slide by and do nothing. But let me tell you something. That's no different when you go to a company. You're going to encounter that. But let me tell you, in hindsight, after decades of working in game development, I think I liked working with the people more than I actually liked the games that we made. And bear in mind, I really, really like those games. It's just, I have all these memories of being in a team and working together, working really hard, working long hours, but you create something and it's amazing. There's really no other feeling like that. And if you haven't experienced it, I hope someday you do, especially if the thing you're creating involves something creative. You make something that's bigger than any one of you, that no one of you could have made. So of course it means all of you were needed. It's just an amazing thing. But here's the lesson I want to point out. And it was the hardest lesson for me to learn. And I will tell you what I've been told repeatedly by people I work with in the industry, that I am naive and optimistic because I keep learning this lesson and then I relearn it and relearn it and relearn it. And the lesson is simply this. 2 words. People lie. People lie all the time. People will lie right to your face. They'll look you right in the eye with a smile on their face and tell a complete fabrication. Or worse, I've met people who find a way to lie to you where they're not stating anything that's provably false, but it leads you to a conclusion that is false. So later on they go, well, I didn't actually tell you that. If you believed it from everything I said that led up to that, that's your fault. So I've learned to sometimes ask questions like, so do you mean X? Even then, they'll sometimes lie to you, especially if someone won't send you something in an email but will only tell you verbally, they're probably lying. But let me put a spin on this that makes it even more complex, because I always like to talk about nuance. There's a lot of people I've met who lie to themselves. They lie to themselves about things. So when they're talking to you, they're not really lying to you. They've lied to themselves. They believe the thing they're telling you is true. So they're only lying to you by proxy. They've lied to themselves. They believe this thing to be truth. And so what they're telling you is a truth. They don't even know they're lying because they believe it. And let me give you some examples because people always go, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And I know some of you are like, oh, you're just, defending employers or you're going to bag on employees. No, I've seen this lie at every level. I've watched my coworkers lie. I watched my employers lie. And I've watched my employees lie. One of the biggest lies I get is, I'm on top of this. Yep, I'm doing this. Yep, it'll be done on time. Yep, I'm well along. It's going to be done. People have said this to me to my face who haven't even started it. They haven't even begun, whether it's a design or code or art, they haven't even done the very first line or pixel or word. Sometimes I have discovered this because in the era of Perforce and, managed check-ins, I can actually go to someone and go, you say you've started this, but I see no check-ins for you for the last month. And they're like, well, I'm doing research. I'm like, show me your research. I don't have it. It's in here. That's tough. You know, you want to believe them, but after a while, that trust but verify phrase means more and more to me. I've also had people say to me that they're they they're going to finish the project we're on, but then they want to look for something else, and they have really good reasons. Sometimes they need more money. Sometimes they want to move. Sometimes they're like, hey, I came here to work on this thing, but I'm not interested in the other projects coming down the pipe, so I'm going to leave after it's done. In every case, they looked right at me, or I watched them say this to their boss if I was like in another project, and then guess what? They left anyway. And in all the cases I'm talking about, it's not because the game took longer than expected, not because of schedules changed. They pretty much lied about staying. In one case, it was because they wanted their name to go in the credits, so that they could use that credit, which they knew was coming out, to say, I was in this role on this game. And they parlayed that into a better job. In one case, I watched somebody say they were looking for another job, receive from their company a counteroffer, meeting and exceeding what they're getting from the other place. They asked for it in writing. They then took it to the other place and got a better offer and quit anyway. And by the way, I'm not saying don't do this, but it's like everything. It's like when people say, I have free speech. You do, but there's also consequences to it. If people don't believe you anymore after this, that's a consequence to it. If you look someone in the eye and go, I promise I'll stay, and then you leave 3 weeks later. One of the worst ones I've heard, usually from employers, is no one's going to get fired over this. And then someone's fired. I've had it happen where we were doing some project tests. We were trying to do levels in different ways. So we assigned different groups of people, and we gave them very different ways of putting a level together. We gave them different assets. We gave them a different team mix, and we gave them different goals. And I was told this was done as an experiment. No one's going to get fired over this. We just want to see the best way to do things. And I'm like, this is great. Never worked anywhere that ever did something like this. They did it. There was one team that was a very clear winner. Irony, they didn't use that team. But they then had me fire someone saying, well, now that we know how to put together, this person, we don't really need them. He's redundant. He doesn't have the skills we need. And I even said, you said to my face, nobody would get fired. And they basically ordered me. I had to go fire this person. That was such a low point in my career that after I did it, I felt so crappy about it that I went to my boss and I said, I'm never going to do that again. The next time something like that happens, you do it. And if you order me to do it and there's no other question, I will quit on the spot. Would you like that in writing? We had a big argument over it where he said, you were technically that person's boss and that's your job. And I'm like, no, because I wasn't going to fire him. The worst part that happened is there was someone who was doing, I thought, a pretty good job, but my boss wanted him fired. He didn't like his work. I did, my boss didn't. After I left that company, that person, that employee was told I was the one who wanted him fired. And that was my boss who saved his job. And I think he did that because after I left, he realized that guy really did do good work and he really wanted to keep him. And I was like, by the way, I could do a whole video on how willing people are to accept lies. I mean, forget all the people who tell them. There's a lot of people who just go, yes, your lie coincides with what I believe, so I'm not even going to try to verify it. I believe you with absolutely no evidence. That has happened time and time and time again. And I've been told, Tim, you're naive. This keeps happening to you. Why do you keep believing it's not going to happen again? And it's just because I'm optimistic. And that's been a very hard lesson for me to learn. I've learned that over and over. People lie. Not just employers, not just employees, not just people on your peer level. Everybody lies. And they always find reasons to do it, and they always feel validated for why they did it. So I know that's negative, but you might want to just always keep that in mind. Like I said, trust but verify, ask for things in writing. Now, ironically, I'm now going to talk about what I find to be the most fulfilling thing about game development, and that is the creating, not the creation. I love making an IP, a new IP from scratch. I love that. That's my favorite thing. Fallout was super fun. Arcanum was super fun. Wildstar was super fun. Pillars, Tyranny, as little as I was involved in both of those, and then Outer Worlds to a huge extent. Those were all super fun to make from scratch. Loved it. But then there's a reason I think I move on after each game and I'm not as interested in the sequels, because to me, the most amazing part was just done. And that to me, I think is the most fulfilling experience for me, is making a new IP with a group of people. It is intense, but that collaboration is incredibly gratifying, especially, like I said, you will make something that you never would have made on your own. And in many cases, couldn't have made on your own. Whether it's someone else had a better idea than yours and you slotted it into the game, or someone had the technical or artistic skills to realize an idea you had that you never would have been able to do on your own, or if just in the middle of a wonderful brainstorming session, an idea comes out, and afterwards, there's no one person you can point to and say that was their idea. It was just this collection of people talked and this idea emerged, like from the ether. Those have been amazing. I've done crazy joint code debugging sessions that decades later I still remember. Combing through the code, finding the most egregious bug and fixing it, and then suddenly your game is 10 frames per second faster, or doesn't crash, or, just some feature suddenly works that was completely disconnected. Those are great experiences. So and also making cool system mechanics or making cool content. On Fallout and Arcanum, those experiences were just incredibly fulfilling. They were wide in scope. The intenseness of doing it, that is probably what I remember the most, and what always brings me back to game development is you always want to recapture that. And it's happened on every game of mine, but I think it happened most frequently on Fallout, probably because it was my first game I was in charge of. And it happened on Arcanum, probably, for me, the deepest and most intense, because as I mentioned in other places, Leonard handled most of the publisher, so I was completely focused on the game. So it's funny that working in teams is the source of the hardest lesson I've ever had to learn, that people will lie to you, but also the most fulfilling game dev experiences that I've ever had, which is making something amazing that exceeds any individual's contribution. Well, that was a long answer. I hope, Zamalta, that answers your question. And I hope everyone else enjoyed the story time.